In Hillary Clinton's new book, What Happened, she makes a number of claims about Bernie Sanders. Claims that I broke down in a recent video and showed you that they're just, in fact, lies. And one of the worst of the lies is the idea that Bernie Sanders stole her ideas and then made them better. But when I broke it down in the video, I showed you the dates, when Bernie Sanders announced his specific policies, and then when Hillary Clinton announced hers. And she actually announced hers after Bernie, at least in the specific examples that Hillary mentions in her book. So she's just straight up lying. And up to this point, Bernie Sanders hasn't really given a direct response, opting instead to say that we need to focus on the future and focus on policies like Medicare for all. So Bernie, being a humble, nice guy, he hasn't wanted to get into this big discussion yet. But on MSNBC with Chris Hayes, he actually finally gave a direct response.
Here's a portion that I thought got to something that's sort of interestingly deep and substantive and continues in the party today. And this is about the sort of, let's call it the frontier of the possible. The question of what a presidential candidate is selling their voters and what goals they're setting in this sort of trade-off between reality, right? So she says, no matter how bold and progressive my policy proposals were, Bernie would come out with something even bigger, loftier, and leftier, regardless of whether it was realistic or not. And then Jake Sullivan has this analogy to, there's something about Mary, where a deranged hitchhiker says he's come up with a brilliant plan. Instead of famous 8-minute abs exercise routine, he's going to market 7-minute abs. It's the same, just quicker.
I.e., Bernie Sanders just stole all of Hillary Clinton's ideas. Does anybody really believe that? The truth is, and the real story is, that the ideas that we brought forth during that campaign, which was so crazy and so radical, have increasingly become mainstream. I talked about a $15 an hour minimum wage. Right. Hillary did not. You know what? We got 31 co-sponsors on legislation for $15 an hour minimum wage. Talked about $1 trillion infrastructure. We talked about making health care a right of all people through Medicare for all. Medicare for all is becoming mainstream within the Democratic Party. So making public colleges and universities tuition free. Talk to the governor of the state of New York. He's pretty proud of his accomplishment. So what I'm saying here, Chris, is many of the ideas that we talked about, that Secretary Clinton and others said, oh, those are too far out. They are the ideas that are sweeping America, that most Americans now support.
All right, so obviously the idea that Bernie Sanders was stealing Hillary Clinton's ideas is laughable. And the ideas that Bernie Sanders brought to the table, like Medicare for all or a $15 minimum wage, are now becoming the norm within the Democratic Party. And you even have politicians like Kamala Harris coming out and co-sponsoring his Medicare for all bill. So while Bernie Sanders' response seems like a rational response, there are some of those crazy Hillary supporters out there which aren't just bots. So here's a tweet from comedian Jen Kirkman, where in response to a tweet about Bernie Sanders wanting Hillary Clinton to stop arguing about 2016, she says, "Go fuck yourself with a chainsaw repeatedly, and maybe your tax returns will fall from your bowels. I hate you." So if I thought this was a tweet of Jen Kirkman just trying to be funny, I wouldn't include it in this video. But this is a pattern of behavior with her. So she has made a number of tweets like this against or espousing her hate for Bernie Sanders, which, if you know or follow Bernie Sanders at all, the guy just wants people to have a good life. He wants Medicare for all. He wants tuition-free college. He wants a higher minimum wage. He's not doing anything crazy. He's not looking for attention. He's been pushing these policies for 40 years, and he ran on a platform to try and raise the profile of these policies, which he has. But there are some people like Jen Kirkman who, for some reason, find this repulsive enough to tell Bernie Sanders to go fuck himself when he simply says, "I don't think we should be arguing about 2016 anymore," which I think is a fair comment to make. So I replied to Jen Kirkman saying this: Bernie's rolling out universal health care, or as Jen Kirkman would put it, fuck yourself with a chainsaw. And to my surprise, she actually responded. He's rolling out a bill as a statement. Learn how politics works. And learn quotes from Heathers. Fuck me up the ass with the chainsaw. So first of all, that's not the Heathers quote. The quote is actually this:
fuck me gently with the chainsaw.
So she actually screwed the quote up twice and told me that I have to learn the quote. But Anyways, that isn't the important part. So in the tweet, she says, Bernie Sanders is just rolling this out as a statement. Now, everyone knows that Medicare for All is not going to pass under a Republican Congress.
You never heard me say, hey, elect me, I'm going to do it all. We are right now on Wednesday going to introduce Medicare for All single-payer program. Let me be very clear. That will not be passed if Trump is president and Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell run the United States Congress. The only way we will take on the drug companies and the insurance companies and do what every other major country on earth is doing is through a political revolution where people stand up and fight back.
The point is to get these senators on now so that if they do happen to flip Congress in 2018, they may be able to get this passed. But Jen Kirkman doesn't understand that. And she also doesn't understand that in politics, you don't come to the table with the compromise. So that's the biggest issue I had with Obama, and a big issue I had with Hillary Clinton's campaign. If she came to the table with the plans that she was pushing in her campaign, they are already half measures. What she should be pushing for, and what politicians, Democratic politicians in general should be pushing for, is everything they want and more. That way, when it gets down to it and you actually have to work with Republicans, when they start trying to take things out of your bill, you wheedle it down to maybe a closer area to what you actually wanted. And that's the issue that Obama had with something like Obamacare, where Obamacare is a Republican healthcare plan. It's an insurance-based system. There's no public option, and it's definitely not Medicare for all. So when you come to the table with a compromise, you get fought anyways. Obama had an issue passing Obamacare even though it was a right-wing plan. So that's why you come to the table with something like Medicare for all. And in a tweet, I responded saying that. Quoting her, I said, "You don't come to the table with the compromise. Learn how politics works." So I got blocked. Of course. But on my personal Twitter account, I was a little more empathetic, and I replied to a tweet about Jen Kirkman's comments saying this. Honestly, I think she needs help. I feel bad making fun of her because I don't think she's in her right mind. And then I discovered I also got blocked on that account. So the reason I bring this up is because this tends to be the typical response from people who hate Bernie Sanders. And if you hate Bernie's message of love and empathy, then you likely have other things going on in your life. So don't be discouraged if you encounter these sorts of trolls, whether they're bots or whether they're real people who actually have a following. But it's important to remember that these people are actually in the minority. And how do I know that? Well, because poll after poll shows that Bernie Sanders is the most popular politician in America. Meanwhile, Trump is still more popular than Hillary Clinton. So regardless of how mainstream media or the rare Bernie-hating celebrity treats Bernie Sanders, it hasn't affected his poll numbers. He remains the most popular politician in America. And I think the main reason for that is because you can see that Bernie is an honest guy. He actually believes what he talks about, and he cares about people. So whether or not you agree with his specific policies, you know that he's coming from a real place, a genuine place. And that's a rare quality in a politician.